Welcome to Accounting Life with Jotham Tai. Today's episode is the value of mentorship. Our guest today is KJ Neish, product manager at Floqast. On this episode, we discuss the importance of mentoring, the different types of mentorship, and how to seek out a mentor or become one yourself. Now, our host, Jotham Tai.
Hey KJ, how's it going? Thanks for joining us on today's episode.
Hey Jotham, it's going awesome, and I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm thrilled to talk about the topic, the main topic we have for this episode, which is mentorship. But before we dig into that specifically, for the audience's sake, could you just introduce yourself and your accounting journey specifically is what I like to start with our podcast guests.
Yeah, awesome. So my name's KJ. You know, after shuffling around my major a couple of times in college, I landed on accounting. So I studied and majored in accounting. I immediately after interned at PwC, and then I actually took a hiatus from accounting, not knowing really whether or not I was going to return to the practice. Only to return like a year and a half later. Went into industry, was a junior accountant, and worked in industry at several software companies. Kind of climbed that corporate ladder to senior manager, overseeing the GL function, and then more recently transitioned out of accounting, went to an implementation role for an accounting software company. So very much rooted in my passion for accounting. And then about a year ago, transitioned from that into product management.
Awesome. Well, since you work for an accounting company still today, and this is the same reason I give for myself, by the way, I can say I'm still an accountant, even though I don't book journal entries anymore because I work and you and I work for accounting software companies. So I think it's fair for us to call each other accountants still, right?
People ask what I do, and I immediately say accounting. It's like what I've done most of my professional career.
Love it.
If I say product manager, like, I get like an imposter syndrome. I'm like, no, I'm an accountant. I have my CPA. I did the work, and I've retained it. It's still active, but I very much associate with being an accountant.
I do the same, only because I know if I say CEO and founder, then it expands to like a much longer discussion. Unfortunately, yeah. And you and I are proud accountants, and when you say accountant, it usually doesn't expand from there. They don't ask about how month-end close is like, unless if they're an accountant too.
No one has follow-up questions.
No one has follow-up questions. But if it's CEO and founder, oh my gosh, like what are you into? Then yeah, you kind of invite yourself to a much longer discussion. But KJ, I wanted to ask you, and I know we have folks from my team that we share mutual contacts with, who have made similar moves, right? So you went from industry and now working for an accounting software company. What prompted you to make that move? Or were you inspired by anything specifically, or seeking new skills to learn and grow into?
I don't think it was like one single variable. I think it was a combination of things, timing, obviously. Like my transition was kind of like post-COVID, and I could probably contribute that transition, that decision, mostly honestly on burnout, where, COVID, I was working in a room, my bedroom where I slept, walked 10 feet, that's where I worked. And it was just so, grueling in terms of like the hours you were putting in. And it just, I saw that I was kind of like prioritizing my work and scheduling like social calendar around the month end close, that I just was looking for something different. But, I've developed and learned so much from accounting that like, I don't regret any of that.
Well, what's great about the roles that you and I are both in now is that same burnout issue, which is coming up more and more. And we recently did an ebook about it, and I know Floqast has done has a lot of great content to support the burnout being a real phenomenon on the ground that's impacting our profession. But what's great about our roles is that we can actually do something about it, so we can help prevent the burnout through the power of automation. And I know that's something that you and I both believe in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so maybe we can pivot to that topic later, but I really was very excited to talk about mentorship specifically. And as I was looking to do this episode, I was reminded that I haven't reached out to my original and most effective mentor for years. So I got to do that after this call. But just starting high level, like for you specifically, KJ, like how have mentors helped you in your career, and how would you describe the I think criticality of mentors and someone's career journey?
Yeah, no, and that's funny. I'm gonna like share this recording with everyone who's had an impact and mentored me, because I feel so lucky for the folks from the get-go who created opportunities for me, encouraged me, asked me like questions of where do I want to be, like forced me to think about it. Because, early on in my career, 20 something wasn't necessarily something I thought about. And like having that one-on-one where that's, the topic of conversation, forcing me to think about it. It's like, okay, maybe I want to get my CPA. What does that look like? After I get that, what do I want from it? But, I think there's so many qualities in a good mentor. One of my favorite is like giving folks a seat at the table. Like if someone has curiosity, they express interest, bring them in, even if it's not in their day-to-day responsibilities, and let them learn on their own.
Yeah, yeah, and that teaching someone how to fish concept in the world and the pace of accounting, like I feel like that's harder to like incorporate into our days. And it sounds like you've had some really good experiences, which I would guess just in our profession is unique, more unique than general practice. I remember my mentor was more of a mentor, less so much from a career perspective, but more about like developing leadership skills. And he was like very methodical about breaking down like how to construct a team with different type of personalities and also like career trajectories. And it was really good for me to learn how he believes strategically like leaders should form their teams, but also he was big on communication and just making sure I don't blow up at a board meeting when I'm presenting for Sarbanes-Oxley material weakness updates. He really like tamed me quite a bit, and I'm a better leader I'm still working on it, but it's had such an immense impact on me.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because I feel like, technical skills, if a person wants to learn it, like accounting isn't rocket science. If they're disciplined and they apply themselves, you're going to learn it. Sure, it might take some practice, it might take some time, but it's like those soft skills, leadership, how to organize a team, how to communicate effectively, being transparent. Like those are the things that I think are harder to teach. So like really prioritizing them, because those are all transferable skills, right? Like put me in any role, those are going to be important for me to have. So really prioritizing that is awesome.
Well, what this discussion is actually helping me realize, although this is, as I think about it, really obvious, but it wasn't really categorized in my head this way until our chat just now. But there are different types of mentors for different types of your growth, right? So you started off by describing a mentor for your career advancement, right? Just helping you figure out which direction to go. There's also the leadership mentors, right? Like how you can become a better leader. But I actually also have like mentors at KPMG on the technical side. So yeah, it's not rocket science to learn. Back then it was SOP 97.2, RevRec, which is then went to 0801, now 606. But I had actually two senior managers at KPMG break down like Stab 101, like RevRec criteria. And so they were mentoring me during a restatement audit out of all types of audits. But even to me, that's considered like technical mentorship. And it was very valuable in my journey because that's what really interested me in tech. And it's really weird. Man, I didn't know this this conversation would be, kind of flashback and lightning. But
I love that's what we're doing here.
I was really excited to do the show. Right? Do you have any other can you think of any other like groups or categories of mentors that have been helpful for you?
Honestly, like preparation for this, so many names cross my mind. And of course, so many of them were my direct managers. But like I define mentor as someone you learn something from. That does not need to be someone on your team. It does not need to be your manager. It could be someone who reports to you. It could be someone junior to you. I have mentors who I didn't directly work with that I just sat near and hearing their conversations of how they were navigating challenging situations was like, oh, that's a takeaway for me. Like that's a good learning. And they might not have even realized I was listening. But
Right.
yeah, I think mentors can take many shapes and sizes.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the old wise person with a pipe blowing bubbles
Yeah,
and
right.
the cardigan sweaters.
No, it
And
certainly doesn't.
I think that's important to recognize. And I think as you become more comfortable kind of in the state of like where you are in your career, I think it's easier for you to accept that mentorship is not a sign that you're deficient in any area. It's the only way you really are able to reflect on yourself and figure out like what other skills and new qualities to add to your repertoire. Um, and we don't talk enough about this in accounting, so I'm glad again we are.
I was just going to say, it kind of reminded me. I think such an important characteristic of like now I'm thinking like leader, but also mentors, like humility, right? And that goes along with like recognizing your juniors can be mentor to you. Is you may not know everything, and that's absolutely okay. You don't have to, but a willingness to admit that and a willingness to learn and always be in this kind of like growth mindset, I think is what really makes a great mentor, leader, and like individual contributor.
It sounds like you've given a lot of thought to how mentors have shaped you, and it sounds like you're very conscious and thoughtful about these qualities. So now that you're manager and a growing leader yourself, like how are you applying these skills and the way you mentor others?
So when I kind of oversaw like a GL team, I had several people reporting to me, but I think one of the most important things is the one-on-one. And I think it should be recurring. I always like weekly. I think it's totally dependent on the relationship and what you're doing and when, but it can't just be like a meeting that's on a to-do list that you're scratching off. Like I met with this person, and really the topics of conversation in those one-on-ones is what matters. And like I try to incorporate what I've really appreciated in my one-on-ones with my managers and mentors, with those that I manage. One question that I really liked asking on a weekly basis is like, what did you learn or what did you improve this week? Now, the expectation there is not what significant enhancement did you make and what is now automated, but what tiny thing did you focus on? And like, let's really like build this environment of incremental improvement because there's always something to improve.
Yeah, I love that. Just having the one-on-ones as a baseline and then just asking questions about non-tactical, how many entries did you book last week? It's
How many bills were processed?
right, right. Are there any exceptions to audit exceptions that we need to talk about today? Yeah, and
Yeah.
if I had to guess and estimate, and let me know if I'm being unfair to industry, but maybe it's me specifically because most of my experience has been in tech, but I don't think these types of one-on-ones are happening at a high frequency um, in the industry, right? Because I think the focus is always just like execution and getting work done. One-on-ones are probably like 90%, 95% like checklists, like as you mentioned, and not enough time spent on development. And you think that's the case, or and I haven't been in the industry for a long time, so I should probably qualify.
Anecdotally, like potentially, I have a hard time believing that everyone had the same experience I had, because otherwise I think there wouldn't be a retention problem, or there wouldn't be like, folks leaving the industry or hesitating to join the industry. So something's happening there. And I would encourage, like, if you're in a position where you're having one-on-ones, they're maybe not, exactly what you want to talk about. That tone doesn't need to come from your manager. The agenda doesn't need to come from your manager of what to discuss, like you can bring that to the table as a staff, a junior, and really drive that conversation.
I hope that's one of the biggest takeaways from this conversation. So if you are not getting that one-on-one time that you need to grow and learn, you can ask for it. You can raise your hand and say, hey, like, can we make this a part of our normal routine? And to me, there's not there's a lot of value not only in just like asking, what did you learn, or how did you go into last month, but sometimes just having like time, like a free form conversation about career, and maybe just like not having structure for 5 minutes and talking about growth in general kind of gets new ideas on the table. And I actually recently did this with one of my directs, and I won't name which one, but she had a hard time really constructing like a plan for her growth plan for herself, and kind of just, gave ourselves some time to like free form, like without parameters, like let our brains kind of like stray, and some good ideas came out of it. I think just having that time allotted to allow you to think freely about growth ideas is also time well spent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also, another quality of, like, to me, a mentor is someone who focuses on relationships, not like in the transactional sense of like the to-do list and crossing things off, but like, sharing things that are going on outside of work. Like, I've become friends with everyone who has managed me, everyone who I have managed. And that, is maybe a shared experience of we're all working and have this like common goal of closing the books. But like with that, we talk about family, we talk about friends, hobbies, where are we going on vacation? And like, don't just like, I guess, narrow your conversation on like just work. I mean, we all have lives outside the context of accounting.
Well, yeah, I think it was my last podcast, which this topic came up, but through another angle. But I think there's a general tendency, especially those of us that started in audit, for relationships to be more transactional than broad-based relationships, right? So you're used to just like asking for samples, and then when you get it, you got what you need, so you're done. You're not like really looking to go out to eat with marketing if you're asking for an estimate on something. So I think that's something that we accountants, maybe for those of us that are maybe old school and started earlier in their careers, just being more transactional, something for us to be mindful about, because those relationships help form and kind of foster the type of mentorship benefits that could help you with your growth. So I love that point, KJ.
Yeah, and I don't want to like come across as like this is an easy thing to do, because like I think to your point, like that experience of it being like transactional or not having all the context you wanted in the background, we all have these deadlines, we all have these things that need to be done on day one, day two, maybe pre-close. So it's hard to like navigate and meet those goals, all the while facilitating like these relationships and these conversations might not be at all related to accomplishing some deliverable, but understanding that like that work and those conversations you put in really create just a better environment.
It creates a better environment, but I'm a huge believer, KJ, that it leads to ultimate productivity for the business. There's a really strong payback when people around you are growing and adding new skills. And especially for fast growing companies like the companies that we're both in, you kind of need people to adapt to new dynamic situations and scenarios. And those that are learning and growing and not just at a static state can help you solve the new dynamic changes that businesses face. Beyond just like, I think it forms a culture that is a lot more positive when you keep those points in mind. And so, gosh, I almost want to do a flow chart, KJ, and maybe even a T account to quantify the value of.
Let's put it in like a T account.
I still can't help being an accountant.
No, but I'd had several managers who like repeated the sentiment, but and I probably have myself, but like the importance of, even explicitly saying like, we're not saving lives in accounting. And that's not to demean the work and not say it's not important, but it helps contextualize, if I don't get something done on time, I need to give myself that grace. And like, maybe there's a learning opportunity in there for how I can improve the next time. I have always had that sort of tone at the top that I really appreciate. And unfortunately, I don't think that's like, a universal thing in accounting. And I think it should be, the work's going to get done. Let's work together. Let's create a culture in which we all want to be here and do our best.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are really important points, and the consequences of not applying this type of mindset. We're seeing the effects of that in the profession now, and I know it's gotten a lot of coverage. Mass exodus in the space. I think I just came across an article a couple of days ago. Is it DuPont or someone, a Fortune 500, reported a material weakness because of the shortage of accountants, because accountants are leaving because they're not being fulfilled and growing. So this is starting to have like a real immediate effect on the profession. And I guess just as a segue to the last set of questions here, i.e. recent events, do you have any kind of thoughts and perspectives on all the publicity, the negative publicity about our profession and the mass exodus? What are your general thoughts on that?
Well, I think current events, like everyone's talking AI, ChatGPT, its integration with accounting, and inevitably how it's going to change the industry. I think it's such an exciting time to like be in accounting and explore it as a career option. I also think accounting, the industry as a whole, has to fundamentally change where it like embraces this technology. I think, and I'm sure you're well aware, accountants are so good at doing the same thing over and over because that's what works. I mean, like Sally, or what is it, like same as last year. It's like that sort of like mindset of like, don't change, don't embrace, don't look for those incremental improvements. But like now, if any, I think is the time to like hit the pause button. What tools are available for us to use? Where can we automate? I don't think there should be anyone on the accounting team who's just like transactional, entering bills over and over. It's like, we can automate that. We can automate a ton of reconciliations. Let's up-level those folks, have them be more strategic, build these relationships we're talking about, and truly create a great opportunity for them as an accountant.
Yeah, well, the mentorship, the growth conversations, the relationships, and the time to form those, you can't start any of that if you are bogging yourself down with too much manual work, because you are not open to newer technologies that can help you be more efficient. And what's really interesting, and this is maybe me just like connecting dots where they don't exist, but I remember the later part of last year, a lot of talks and studies about, and statistics, troubling statistics about the mass exodus in the profession. And then GPT blew up in Q4 and Q1, and AI is now a hot topic. But it's almost like a solution has presented itself for the problem that was highlighted last year. And you touched on this point, and I think it's important to acknowledge the Sally point. Something we have to acknowledge is that we accountants have been like trained to be consistent, right? Because consistency and conservatism are one of the two core tenets of accounting. And throughout our journeys, whether you're an audit or industry, we put a lot of value and stock on accounting transactions being recorded consistently over time, whether it's methodology or systems. So it's not easy, but again, the data is very clear about what's happening in our profession. We are gonna keep losing talented people if we do not find a way to develop and grow them in areas that they're interested in. So, gosh, I think I didn't know going into this conversation that mentorship is really like a core piece to, this whole, it ties into AI, it ties
Right?
into the mass exodus. I mean, am I just like over connecting these
It's
dots
all
here?
a big
Jeez.
circle here. It's all interdependent.
For the record, not a circular reference because we don't like those in accounting.
Yeah, no air function here.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I did learn about the iterative formula over the last couple of years. But that's a whole nother probably podcast episode.
Yeah, Excel hacks.
Oh my goodness. Well, KJ, it's been a lot of fun catching up with you. Yeah, I think for those in the audience, I want to like repeat this again because it was to me one of the key takeaways and a point that you raised earlier. If you are not getting that time to talk to someone, to talk to your manager about mentorship and growing and learning and development, please raise your hand. I think it's critical that accounts have that opportunity. And I guess before we wrap up too, KJ, any parting advice for our audience before we close it out here?
Yeah, no, probably too much. But I think, taking that initiative and taking control of your own professional development. If you're not getting the resources you need to learn and develop in your role from your manager, because I'd love to think that they're all great, but at the end of the day, they're not. There are so many resources outside the context of your work. This podcast, these conversations that you have, Jotham, I think are amazing, in which people in, the industry are having these ideas, talking about their experiences. There are several other podcasts or books. I'm personally an Audible subscriber, so I like the ebook. But there's just like no shortage of resources if you're curious and have that passion to learn.
That's right. In other words, like there are resources and materials all around you. That is not a reason why you can't let yourself kind of jump into this world of growth. And that's really good advice there, KJ. And again, appreciate you joining us today. And maybe we come back and talk about iterative calculations or some other accounting.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the opportunity to join you for this conversation.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining, and we'll catch up soon.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want more information, please check us out at gapify.com, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.